I'm delighted to welcome Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Ken, thanks for making the time. I know it's a crazy busy time, and you're winning victories right and left on so many different fronts. You were just telling me about a big win on mask mandates, but I want to focus today on this huge win at the Supreme Court that essentially overturns the Biden sort of Remain in America policy. Talk for a moment about the actual impact of what this decision does.
Well, if you'll remember when President Obama opened the border up, we had massive number of people coming from Central American countries and Mexico. And so when President Trump came into office, he had a huge problem on his hand, and it took him some time to figure out remedies. And one of the remedies that worked especially well was this Remain in Mexico. And the way this was working prior was he would come in, they were advised by immigration lawyers, probably in America, claim asylum. And then you have a hearing, but the hearings aren't for 1, 2, 3 years. You disappear, you never show up. And only about 14% of the people actually qualify for asylum, but they were coached on what to say. And what it did was really allow these people to come up to border agents to say, I'm claiming asylum, so they could just stay. And so President Trump put the Remain in Mexico policy in place, and the law was backing him up. And when he did that, it really cut down on the number of people who were using this loophole to come in, because they realized they weren't going to just walk in and stay. Well, President Biden, kind of a long story, but President Biden undid all of that immediately. And of course, you can see the results. We're back to even worse than what happened under President Obama. We're back to numbers just a year later, a year after President Trump left, that are the largest numbers we've ever seen. Last month, we have over 200,000 new people come in that we know of. The month before, the same. We're talking massive numbers. And it was partly because this policy was stripped. And now we've got an injunction to keep it in place because the U.S. Supreme Court said that what President Biden did was illegal.
Now, let's talk about the claim that you made, as I understand, on the behalf of Texas, but it was also Missouri joining the case, essentially saying that, look, this is unfair to Texas. It's unfair to Missouri. Why? Because if the federal government, through its own actions, is dispersing all these illegals into our states, we then have all these responsibilities to provide them with this and provide them with that, and that's a burden on the state. Explain the basis for the lawsuit itself. What was Texas claiming? How did Texas claim injury at the hands of the Supreme Court?
Well, it's relatively easy for a border state, and it's even becoming a lot easier for almost any state to claim injury, because these people come in, they cost money. We have to educate them. We have to provide for health care. We have law enforcement costs. We have crime costs. We have social costs. We have healthcare costs related to COVID. Because they're not prevented from coming in right now because of COVID. Now, if you're a U.S. citizen, you can't come back into the country. But if you're illegal, you're not only brought in, but then you're dispersed around the country to spread COVID everywhere. So these costs are being transmitted everywhere. We demonstrated to the court that it is a particularly high cost for our state, and that's damaging to our state, to our economy, and to our people.
Now, as I understand it, and tell me if I'm reading this correctly, because I have the decision, but I'm slowly making my way through it. The Supreme Court appears to have affirmed a ruling that said, in effect, that look, if the Biden administration wants to take illegals, it actually can, but it's got to house them or detain them itself. That it can't simply sort of, you may say, spread them around the country and let the states fend for themselves in dealing with the illegals, and that since the Biden administration does not have the ability to hold these illegals on its own, therefore it needs to restore the Trump Remain in Mexico policy. Is that a correct reading, or if not, correct me?
No, that's right. And the reality is they can't house these people. They got more people than they've ever had. It's being overrun. Even if they could house them, I still don't think that this should be, obviously it's illegal immigration, but just the fact that they're letting millions of people just tromp through our state, over the last year, and it's just going to continue. And we can't even keep track of all of them because they're being transported secretly around the country.
Now, if I think back to when the Supreme Court rejected the claim by you, which is by Texas, but also by other states, on the issue of the election, the court basically said you don't have standing, right? That the court basically said that what happens in Pennsylvania, what happens in Michigan is, I guess, no concern of Texas. It seems to me that they couldn't really say that here because it's so obvious that illegal immigrants flooding the southern border of Texas has standing, right?
Yeah, and obviously I didn't agree with that standing argument because when a state sues another state, we don't have another court to go to. We are not allowed under the Constitution to go to a federal district court or a state court in our own state. The Constitution provided one place for go, it was the U.S. Supreme Court on state versus state case. So it's a little bit different issue, and I don't think they were right on the stand. I think Alito and I think it was Thomas were right on the standing issue because the founders envisioned a place for everybody to have their day in court, even states. And if this interpretation by the Supreme Court is right, states don't have a place to go if the Supreme Court says no.
When we come back, I want to probe with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton the basis of the Supreme Court's decision and what happens to the illegals that Biden has already let in. We'll be right back.